Hello again. Every day, new stories emerge about the way that things are being run in Britain. Stories which would once have strained our credulity. These days, they are simply greeted with a resigned shrug. Take, for example, the idea that patients waiting in a hospital clinic are given top priority if they're unable to speak English. That sounds pretty mad, doesn't it? I mean, this is Britain's National Health Service. You would think that as a bare minimum, those being treated would be able to speak the national language of the country. But no, of course, these days, even so simple and obvious a requirement cannot be taken for granted, and many NHS trusts spend an absolute fortune on translators and interpreters. I expect many of those watching this video will have seen leaflets from their hospital or doctor's surgery which have been translated into every conceivable language. In this way, the cost of a simple leaflet is multiplied by a factor of 5 to 10, as loads of interpreters and translators are required to join in the process, even if you're just producing a leaflet about athlete's foot, say, you have to translate it into Yoruba, Arabic, Urdu, and so on. It will also not have escaped notice that visiting any English hospital these days is like entering a United Nations refugee camp, with almost all the patients and staff being either foreigners or immigrants. I say this not in a pejorative sense, but simply as a statement of fact. Never mind if this is a desirable state of affairs, it's simply how things are today. With so many foreigners being treated in our hospitals, it is perhaps inevitable that many of them will not be able to speak or understand English. Of course, it would be very wrong to deny them medical treatment simply because they are foreigners, and so the National Health Service routinely hires translators for those who cannot otherwise communicate with the doctor. This makes even the simplest appointment a time-consuming and very expensive affair. Dealing with somebody who doesn't speak English is a good deal more difficult than treating somebody who understands what you're saying. Because people attending outpatient appointments are often not seen on time, and because paying translators to sit around doing nothing is a waste of NHS money, some trusts have begun operating a system whereby if a clinic is running late, then they find it cheaper to make the English patients go to the back of the queue and to see all the foreigners first who need translators. This means that it's less likely that translators will need paying for hours sitting idle, waiting for the patient they are with to be called in to see the doctor. Such patients are therefore treated as being the top priority, and only after they have all been seen will the patients who speak English be allowed to see the doctor. One trust which has been identified as operating such a policy is Imperial College Healthcare, which covers a big chunk of northwest London. But there are, of course, others. In the description to this video, I give a link to a news item about this matter. Now, while this sounds completely mad and grossly unfair for ordinary English people, the logic behind the policy is sound, and it certainly saves money for the trusts which follow this sort of procedure. This, then, is the kind of mad Alice in Wonderland state that our country now finds itself in, where it makes perfect sense to discriminate against English people by allowing foreigners to queue jump when receiving medical treatment. The logic may well be impeccable, but most of us will nevertheless feel angry and cheated that we, the indigenous population who have paid for the hospitals via our taxes and national insurance contributions, are made to take second place to foreigners who might have arrived here 5 minutes ago.